our speaker, Christina Sibaouih, is our Division Administrator for Community Engagement at Iowa College Aid. She oversees programs ranging from college and career readiness training for school professionals to collective impact initiatives, our LCANs, supporting a network, our LCAN network, and she also serves as Project Director for the statewide Gear Up grant. With over 10 years experience in education, international development, research, and grants, she holds an MA in International Studies and Diplomacy from Al-Akwan University and a BA in Applied International Studies from Grandview University. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Christina.
Thank you, Megan. We're going to see if I can get switched over here.
Oh, Christina, I am not getting audio from you. It doesn't look like you're muted.
I'm getting audio. Is your computer muted?
There we go.
Muted.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
All right. One second here, I'll pull up. And I didn't hear the music coming up on the intro, so I'm not sure if everyone heard that or not. Tressa, did you hear it?
You know, I don't think I did. Megan, I think your computer might have been muted, and I think that might have impacted the music or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. Well, that's okay. That's not a problem. So there is a song, and maybe we can play it at the end, that was sort of my walk-up music. And I wanted to share it with you all because it always comes to mind when times are difficult. I'm not necessarily a positivity person. I'm more realistic, but I need that, you know, reminder of there is a new day. There is, you know, another turn of the page will happen again. And so it's a song actually from a group, I believe they're from the Congo or Ivory Coast. I cannot remember which country, but a country in Africa. I spent a lot of time in Northern Africa, and the song's in French, and this chorus in particular is very timely, even though this is actually quite an old song. Despite the length of the night, the day will awake again. Unity, peace, and solidarity for a better world. I dream of a better world without differences in colors, equality. However, to become someone, you will have to live through the bad blows of fate. And don't fall asleep, wake up, because you hold your destiny. Don't fall asleep as if this world wasn't made for you. Wake up, let's finally live what we believe. This is just sort of my loose translation of what it says, but I hope you get to enjoy the song. It has a very good, powerful feeling to it as well. So let's get into my presentation here. My name is Christina Sibaouih. I oversee the Community Engagement Division here at Iowa College Aid, and this is a relatively new division. If you were able to listen to Mark's presentation, it gives you a good context for the agency and kind of how community engagement fits in. All of these programs and initiatives that we have done have only come into play over the last 7 to 10 years overall. Really the most intense part of the work that we've been doing in building community engagement is over the last 5 years. So as we begin to talk about how all of these pieces come together, keep in context that this is relatively new work that we have been doing. So let me start with the organizational context, kind of the strategic positioning of our agency, Iowa College Aid. I think this is important to start. When you're going through the process of planning, they don't always come one before the other in the normal order that people might think. But from our standpoint, the strategic planning piece really fed into how we envisioned our future path for community engagement. So we have 3 major functions of our agency, bureaus or divisions. The research and communications area, financial aid and post-secondary registration, and then community engagement. And those kind of form the back circle of what our agency does as work. And then these 3 circles in the middle, these are our goals for the strategic plan. Trusted information source. We want to become that trusted information source, maintain that position in the state. We want to have activities that actually meet the needs of our stakeholders and in the state overall. And we want to increase and align our resources as any agency just to make sure that we are able to function and do the work that needs to be done. So each of these goals can be broken down into strategies, and these just kind of outline what each one of these strategies are. As in becoming a trusted information resource, we really want to make sure that we have research backing the work that we're doing, that we're leveraging data, and that we're convening people together. So the convening right now that we're doing is a good example of that work. Our second goal is aligning those programs and services with the needs of Iowa residents and key stakeholders. We have a stakeholder advisory group that was formed with our commission to help involve our commission more in the work that we do in community engagement in particular. A needs assessment to identify those key stakeholders and gaps in our programs and services, communications plan to publicize our agency resources and effectively engage our stakeholders, public advocacy, positioning ourselves in a way that can help to advocate for policy changes that are necessary to move our end goals further ahead, and then aligning our implementation. We don't want to be just another wave in the ocean, another thing that people have to worry about doing in terms of programs. We want to be connecting things together that are already in place and making the facility across those different pieces work better. So that is an important piece of what we do. And goal 3 is increasing and aligning our resources. So we want to be able to have external funding available, things like grants, our U.S. Department of Ed grant for Gear Up, our AmeriCorps grant that places our AmeriCorps members. We want to be true with our fiscal management in terms of budget monitoring, evaluate the programs that we are implementing and supporting, and then continuous improvement, always looking to do better and use that information that we gather to improve those systems. So let's understand the bigger picture and working back from the end state. So as we're looking at building this ecosystem of supports for the state, we have to kind of work within a particular context. Mark hit on this on a couple of his points, but just a very basic idea here is that we have 3 important kind of stages in an individual's trajectory. This is very simplified, of course. But you kind of have the K-12 sphere, you have higher education, and then the end goal is employment. And the whole idea is community prosperity, right? An individual being happier, having a fulfilling life, and that educated citizenry really, it's inextricably linked to gainful employment and that resulting in economic and social gains. So at the end of the day, that's what we're working for, is to move people through that trajectory effectively, efficiently, and in a way that ensures equality as well and equity. But we know there's some loss points, and the biggest loss points are going to be, that enrollment piece, that transition between K-12 and higher ed. And then we lose a lot of students as well in that transition from completing their educational degree or credential and actually getting into employment, which can lessen their ability to get a high paying job or be able to meet the needs of the employers that need those positions to be filled. So we lose a lot of people along the way, and these are the points that we can work on in terms of implementing our programs and services. The other thing to note here is that these operate, even though we're looking at sort of a trajectory, they're operating kind of independent of one another. And so this is something we've been focusing in on, is this transition, because even though there is some coordination happening in terms of awareness, from an individual standpoint, they're pretty isolated. They work in each of these spheres and they don't see that connection happening. And so those handoffs are crucial. So this is our community engagement ecosystem, and I'm going to break this down in the subsequent slides, but essentially we're building evidence and capacity with a statewide collaborative network of wraparound supports for students, schools, and communities. And so you can see that everything wraps around the student. They're at the center of what we do, but we know that our schools, our universities, our communities all wrap around that student to help support the overall community success. And we also know that there's an important feedback loop present there with data and research. So when we look at this, we kind of flip it on its side, and in the range of community down to student level work, each of the programs that we work with in community engagement fall in this range. So at the very far left, the part that you should be the most aware of in attending this convening is our LCAN initiative. And this is a collective framework of community grants, technical assistance, to build a network across the state to increase college attainment. This is the highest level of work that we do. It's at the community. And then the next level is into professional development with our staff in college access and success work, the professionals that are working in that field, building and sustaining equitable post-secondary opportunities for all students. The next step is supporting schools, so the staff development, and as well as the systems across the buildings as well, and changing and building a college-going culture. So supporting schools across the state in implementing our 5 steps to college access by providing support. We provide data, publications, and resources, and we'll dig into this a little bit more in subsequent slides. And then Gear Up Iowa, we're getting closer down to the individual student work. This is where we're actually working with students to complete particular steps or participate in activities, things like that. Gear Up Iowa is a grant that we received from the U.S. Department of Education. It works with 12 low-income school districts and now 9 colleges and universities across the state to build a comprehensive support and programming and body of evidence for college access and success. And then access and success, this is something that's really in transition, but it's really centered around our AmeriCorps program as well as our virtual assistants. And this is sort of the part of building resources on the ground in our high schools and our colleges to be able to directly support students in completing the steps in the process. So this is a comprehensive advising and support core in communities across the state to support schools, colleges, and students with 5 steps to college. So how do we operationalize these pieces? How do they work together? When we were trying to conceptualize how this works, it really all comes down to these 5 steps that we have named Course to College, and this became a framework. And all of our programs essentially serve as a funnel through which we operationalize each of those steps towards the goal of access, success, and completion. So the steps at the top, we have labeled them with Prepare, which is the early awareness piece, Apply, college applications, Finance is the FAFSA completion and financial aid component, Decide, actually deciding where you want to go, and then showing up, going, transitioning into your post-secondary education. And then you see the community to student funnel at the broadest, with our LCANs going down to the access and success core down at the bottom. And all of this, again, flowing into supporting access, success, and completion. So again, operationalizing, let's dig down into how this looks from a programmatic standpoint and how this relates to the different systems that are working in the state. So at the community level, again, we're looking at collective impact. We're working at how do we support the community and the different actors that are present. And we know that change doesn't happen in one sector. It's not the responsibility of one individual or one organization. It's a community which encompasses these 5 different sectors. And so we work at bringing those different sectors to the table through the development of this collective impact framework that we've labeled Local College Access Network initiative across the state, and then working together to support with technical assistance, grants, in terms of pushing forward, increasing college attainment rates across the state. So this is just a map. Most of you are aware because you're participating in this, but this is what we look like statewide in terms of our reach and the levels of grants, which in terms of years just are basically indicating how long they've been involved. And so it's really important to note the spread across the state. So an important part, if you look at the very top, those 2 bars up there, outreach and awareness and internal capacity development are actually the priorities that our division have identified as how we work together for the next year to really focus in on what matters. And those 2 pieces are our priorities. So we want to do more outreach and awareness building about the program, about the successes, about the work that each of your communities is doing, and what that means for overall initiatives in the state in increasing educational attainment. And then internal capacity development to be able to build our team's ability to support those communities as they evolve and grow and pass through these different years in the program. It's important to note that in adapting our collective impact framework for Iowa's context, we've been changing this a lot along the way and attempting to really be flexible and responsive to the needs of our community and responsive to the needs of Iowa. The model has been borrowed and adjusted based on other states' work, and we wanted to make sure that we were taking into account the specific Iowa context. And we also wanted to again, leverage existing networks and initiatives. A lot of the LCANs that we work with had already had movements going on the ground. There were things that were starting, initiatives that were working together. And so we want to tap into that and help them to work through that in a broader collective sense, but not throw away the work that's been done and not basically superimpose some abstract model. We want to make sure that we're supporting that and connecting the dots across the different pieces that are already in work. And then the other important addition, and particularly now very poignant, is the statewide networks to support equity. So we initiated, it's only been about a year now that we have initiated these statewide networks looking at special populations and supporting the needs of the statewide needs of these equity gaps that we touched upon in the previous presentation. So the next level in our funnel, or in our model of circles here, is building and staff capacity. And I joined these two together because it's really difficult to kind of extrapolate only staff capacity and not building capacity. They're kind of inextricably intertwined. So the goal here really is just to support schools and college access and success professionals in building and sustaining equitable post-secondary opportunities for all. And when we're talking about the situation of building capacity and staff capacity, in the main pieces that we see based on the data that we've received from surveys, feedback from our stakeholders, et cetera, is staff limitations. It would be great to fill out a FAFSA, we just don't have the bodies to do this with every student. The culture is the culture feeding into, well, it's, this isn't really our priority. Our priority is just to make sure that students get graduated from high school, and we're hoping they're going to move on, but that may not happen. And so we have to shift the culture to think about, well, we need to work from our end goals. So looking at how do we support the culture of college going. Resources, those are always limited, particularly in the K-12 sector and across the state. And so we always have to take those into account. Training, we need to be able to provide training for, yes, it's great to have children. Training for the resources to basically level the playing field or lift the floor, as we say, in terms of where is the base and how we operate. So the main programs that we currently operate around building staff capacity and building capacity, the first of these is our Iowa College and Career Readiness Academy. Again, the top bar up there, we look at our priorities right now, our participation in outreach, and then capacity and evaluation. And Megan Sibaouih, who's on here, and you guys all know very well, she is the lead who operates this program very well, and it's been tremendously successful. This program is an online academy that essentially the end goal really is to shift the knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, and norms of college access and success professionals. We're not just trying to provide them with the information, but really make a change about how individuals, and then hopefully as we have more professionals completing these trainings, building wide, are operating. And so some stats here on the bottom, it's important, again, to connect across the partners that are active, the stakeholders in this field. We have our Iowa area education agencies are integrally involved in this, our Iowa School Counseling Association, and the Iowa Department of Education. So these are important pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we have buy-in from the state, but also that they tap in to the guidance, to the regulations, to all the pieces that are out there that the people taking these courses are going to have to operate within. And we don't want to create another layer of chaos or difficulty for them. We want to make this easier. And so when we offer up these courses, we have 6 currently available. In the completion of a certain set of these courses, we offer certificates. And so we have 2 levels of certificates, and through the duration of the program that officially the Iowa model of this started in 2018, we already have 45 people who have completed a certificate, either a specialist or a professional. And then we've had a total of 463 participants involved in the program, enrolled in the program, and it looks like about 289 that were unique participants. So we have multiple enrollments happening. So this is, again, a really important part of building the capacity of the people who do the work, helping to give the context of what are these moving pieces. Did my training provide me, or my degree provide me with all the things that I need to operate in this field and best support students in the state? The next level of this is, referencing back to our funnel of our course to college framework. So that framework also is used in a statewide program where we specifically support school districts in implementing these steps. And you'll see those 5 steps outlined there in the middle. And this is what we work with all of the schools in the state essentially on at least one of these, but we increasingly are getting them engaged more to implement all 5. And so there are 2 levels of school participation. There's participating schools and there's partner schools. And the higher level of partnership will also allow them more resources and support, and also very tailored data to help drive their decision making and their support for students. So again, statewide support, we're right now 157 high schools at the last time that I looked that are participating in this. There's a little over I think 360-ish school districts in the state. So we're doing pretty good in terms of participation of intentionally being involved. We have all of them engaged in FAFSA completion and receiving student level data on FAFSA completion. So that's important, and the only state in the US right now currently operating in that way with all school districts. An important part of this is resources and data, and providing not only the information, but context for how to use it, what it means, really collaborating closely with our AEA system to help in training and development and support for the schools as well. So these all, again, are all very much intertwined with the existing systems. And all of this, again, is targeting building a college going culture and looking at how do we ensure that these steps just become, this is what we do. This is the way that every student should go through the process, and particularly starting early and making sure that they're prepared and aware of what options are available to them, and making those decisions and getting support throughout the trajectory of those steps. So at the student level, we have a lot of different influences that are happening, and it's important when we're looking at programming, working directly with students, that we're taking into context the family, we're taking into context the staff that are in the schools as well as the college support staff, especially as they're transitioning, and then community organizations. So when we look at our student focused programs, again, both of the programs I'm going to highlight here also touch upon staff and building development, but the specific focus is really at the student level. And this is, Gear Up in particular, is a broader initiative where it is definitely engaged in changing the college going culture. But by focusing on a cohort of students, we are able to really highlight the evidence that we can learn from that, because we can isolate what happened at the end of the day with that student or with that cohort of students. So the cohort overall is a federal grant supporting about 8,000 students in 12 districts. We started with a 7th grade, so we're now in year 7 of our working with them. And the entire goal here is increasing their expectations, their readiness, and their enrollment in post-secondary education. And an important key concept of this is that it's school-driven planning, and that it's comprehensive and systematic. So, and if you look down at the bottom here, I've included as well the different areas of focus with our stakeholders. So there's intentional programming in engaging families, working with communities, and community organizations as well, and then direct student support. And this middle piece here, the first year college support, this is the first time that we're providing this. This year, those students transitioned of all years into post-secondary education, and we are in this grant following them through that transition and through their first year of post-secondary. So we're learning a lot about that transition by partnering with 9 institutions in the state. So we have 9 grants that go to 3 community colleges, 3 private colleges, and the 3 Regent institutions that are working directly with our cohort, and the entire focus up at the top there, enrollment, persistence, and retention. And then we also want to build awareness about the importance of Gear Up and the impact that it's had on the state. And data is key here because it is a proof of concept model. The entire focus of a cohort, which can be difficult to implement in terms of why does one student get something and why does another not, but the entire focus is to try to learn what we can about what works and what doesn't. And what we've learned from Gear Up is that it does increase college enrollment. And not only that, what we're seeing is that there's indications that it's leveling the playing field. So students who might not have normally went on to post-secondary education, but because of Gear Up, they did, and they were just as likely as their higher income peers to persist into their post-secondary and actually complete. So that's important evidence to be looking at. And then also there's improvements in grades and also standardized test scores. The other piece of this is making sure that schools are getting their specific reports on the data and outcomes of, since it's very tailored to how the school implements that work. We want to make sure that that feedback loop is happening as well. The last piece of this is college access and success. So this is the AmeriCorps work, but has expanded. If you look up at the top, again, we're looking at member and site management, we're looking at systems and data, coordination across programs, and then getting more students in participating. So right now, this program really encompasses 3 core components. We have college access coaches. These are members that are placed in our high schools. There are also 12th grade students who are nominated and serve as student leaders. They are AmeriCorps members as well, but they help to support those steps to course to college in their school with their peers. So this is a new thing that we had just implemented for the first time last year, and we've had a lot of success with it. It's just been great to see the students getting engaged and having that opportunity, as well as getting an educational award to assist them in their post-secondary completion. And then last year, the first time that we launched a success core, the success coaches are placed in the community colleges, and particularly to support the Future Ready Iowa Last Dollar Scholarship recipients. This is partly because part of the funding is coming through the governor's office to support the Last Dollar Scholarship recipients. There is a requirement that those students have available to them mentoring, and so we have more broadly used this to help them with coaching, and then tap them into career-based mentoring as well, which is another component that's available. And then the last piece of this is virtual assistance. So this year in particular, it's been very crucial to get the virtual assistance piece figured out. How do we meet students where they're at? How do we support very strapped schools and colleges as well in terms of supporting those students? And so we've launched virtual assistance. It will be growing and be available. So one-on-one assistance directly through text messaging as well as online platforms is available. So this is direct one-on-one work. We also, all-encompassing across these 3 different components, is a texting campaign. And so we have actually multiple campaigns that are available for students to sign up at each step in the process, that they'll be able to get these data-driven nudges that will help remind them, even at a community college, for example, important dates, filing dates, events that are happening, things that they need to be aware of, as well as being able to go there to ask questions if they don't know where to go. And we've built a network with our community colleges in particular to help hand them off. So if they don't know where to go, we can get them to the right place. And we all know that no matter how much information is disseminated, it's not always absorbed. And so this is another sort of catch point to make sure if a student falls through, they have a place to go to get help. So all of these different components, again, form this full system. So we're looking at collective, community-driven work at the broadest scale that then flows in with school and community-driven work supported with data at building capacity. The staff intentionally leveling up our work and connecting to our resources. And I talk about leveling up because we're looking at our baseline and we're looking where we're at. And the more that we invest in professional development of our staff in our schools and as well as increasingly, hopefully, in our community colleges and other colleges, we're able to level the playing field up just a little bit more so we can continue to move upward in terms of getting closer to our goals. And then students, ensuring that we have handoffs, those lost points, we need to make sure there's somebody there, there's a safety net, there's something that ensures that the student gets to the next stage, gets to the next contact. And so that's an entire focus of ensuring those handoffs are happened where no one's responsible. How can we step in and help in that responsibility, using data to drive that work, and then close communication and collaboration with our communities, because we don't want to be just an outsider coming in and telling people this is how this is done. How can we help support? And then data and research going around our circle, aligning with the needs and the resources. So there's continuous loop of, as we identify this is the need, here is the intervention or the support or the resource that we will provide to help address that. So this is the presentation that I have for you today. I'd love to hear any questions that you have. And I also provided my email here just in case anyone had anything that they wanted to send directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. So I'll keep an eye on the chat box here for a few moments. But in the meantime, one thing that struck me, Christina, I'm wondering if for any of our leadership team members or some of our newer LCANs who may not be aware of kind of the history of LCAN, can you give us just a 30-second, this is how the LCAN program was established at Iowa College Aid, just to provide some kind of context and grounding for those who might not know that full story?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually the Local College Access Network initiative began with some funding that was available called a College Access Challenge Grant. Those funds were made available after some other funding was discontinued to states, and we were able to get that in 2016, I believe, is the first year that we used that to help support the LCAN initiative. And starting with, basically we learned about the model that was going on in Michigan. And we thought, well, I wonder if we could do this in Iowa. And so we started by basically working with them in terms of how they had developed their model, and began to identify, what kind of funding would be available. And that was when we launched our preliminary kind of $10,000 planning grant, and then built out over the years the model. It has evolved over time, like I said, and been Iowanized a bit. But yeah, that was the origins of it. We even at one point in time had a small grant from Telegen to help look at pathways. So that was another career pathways. So that was another focus area for a little while of thinking, how could we help support particular trajectories that LCANs may be going on as they identify what the needs are in their community. And then at the point when the College Access Challenge Grant ended, we got the support from the commission to dedicate operational dollars or organizational dollars for this program every year consistently. So the first year or two of work really showed that this is important for the state.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And I did have a question come in on the chat box about the ecosystem framework. So what role do families play in the model, in the ecosystem framework? Where do families fit in?
So the most direct relationship that we have with families is in our student focused work. So when we Gear Up in particular, there's an entire component that is focused on family engagement. That has ranged from working with community organizations to provide information at local church gatherings, at directly in community centers. We've even worked with some businesses to have sessions available on work sites in the past. But also just general events. There's been things like barbecues in the past, just to gather families that are a part of the cohort to provide them with information. There's a whole piece that we have within Gear Up on family engagement. It is consistently across the nation the most difficult thing to have a lot of success with, and it takes up a lot of time and effort. I would say we still could do better with it. Every other program that we run and work with, it's really within the community or within the school in terms of us supporting them to do what they think will be right. But that is the only kind of foray that we have in terms of engaging families.
Okay, great, thank you. At this point in time, oh, got another question coming in. So based on the results of Gear Up Iowa, are there aspects of the model that could or should be replicated or scaled up? And if so, is there planning underway to do that?
Yes, definitely. So one of the papers that we published with the first Gear Up grant that we received in 2008 and ended in 2014 were specific services that were important and impactful. And that included college visits, early college visits. It included test prep and several other services, and I can provide more information that specifically had an impact on enrollment. And then we're also learning that, for example, our ACT prep initiative had impacted the scores overall, and also just overall impact of having the entire district complete the test and the overall effect that that had on the average score, which is a concern. So we have information on that coming out soon. FAFSA completion, it has been crazy what we were able to do this year, because we have at least a 7% increase in the midst of a 3 to 5% decrease across the nation. And I believe that that is specifically connected to Gear Up and our cohort, but it allowed our state to be higher up on the list nationwide in terms of year-over-year change. So we know a lot about that as well. We're going to be publishing more information specifically about the findings of Gear Up. We have a paper that talks about the increased enrollment, and also the that it didn't impact their ability to persist and complete. We have a paper on the services. There's one currently under review that is about the 10th grade work that we did in terms of attendance and assessment scores. So definitely lots of information that we can share.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we had another more of a comment come in that I wanted to share. And this comment says, "Thank you, Christina. The longer we are in our LCAN roles, the more we need to be aware and reminded of all the goals, functions, and strategies that Iowa College Aid provides to support our efforts. As a current participant in the College and Career Readiness Academy, I'm so much more aware of needs and resources. I especially appreciate the depth of information about Gear Up and its cohort approach." So yeah, and I should say that came from Donna Lowen, one of our LCAN coordinators. So thank you for sharing that, Donna. And Carol, out of our opt-in network, had the previous questions. So yeah, that's great to hear, Donna. I'm, as Christina said, I also, in addition to my LCAN work, run the College and Career Readiness Academy. So I'm super happy to hear that you're having a good experience there, that those resources are meeting your needs. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the feedback goes both ways. So a great example is one of our LCANs that's helping to inform the development of a new course in the academy. So we definitely have over the years used a lot of insight that we have gained and knowledge that we have gained from you all in the LCAN aspect to inform programming. So when you learn something, we try to take that to heart as well. And so we want to make sure that, yes, you guys know about the things that we offer up and hopefully engage in those if they're appropriate and supportive of what you're trying to do. But also if there are things that are missing or connections that need to be made or pieces that need to be built, we want to make sure that we're getting that to help inform our decision making as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I think we'll do now, I'll keep an eye on the chat box in case someone else has another question. But I did want to, because we had some technical issues at the start and no one was able to hear the walk-up song for Christina. We're going to go ahead and try that again because it, you know, after seeing the lyrics, I just would love for everyone to hopefully be able to hear that. So keep the chat box up. If you have any other questions that come to mind, please do drop those in and we'll talk about them. But in the interim, we'll just hopefully get some music started so that we can listen to that for a bit before our next session.
Will you guys give me a thumbs up if you can hear it?
Yes.
La nuit, le jour s'est levé là. De paix et solidarité pour un monde. Le jour s'est levé là. J'avais rêvé d'un monde meilleur, sans différence de couleur. Égalité, pour devenir quelqu'un, il faudra vivre les mauvais coups du destin. Vous m'avez follaillé depuis longtemps, frère. Moi je suis mis à l'écart, ils me jugent illégal, pourtant j'ai de l'amour à leur égard. Mais tant que leur regard fixe ma différence, j'aurais du mal à croire à tes rêves de gloire et à tes espérances. Le respect commence là où l'ignorance se termine, alors pourquoi faire mine d'être heureux dans la tolérance? Ici je suis venu, j'ai vu, on m'a vaincu. Voilà pourquoi mon frère tu ne m'as pas encore convaincu. Alors réveille-toi, parce que tu es ton destin. Assalamu alaikum, n'endors pas, comme si ce monde était pas fait pour toi. Réveille-toi. Ils vont penser que nous croyons. Je veux pas croire que c'est de ma faute ce que nous pensons. Parce qu'ils pensent que l'enfer c'est les nôtres. Quelle égalité, faut gagner son destin. Gagner son destin sans perdre son âme. Vivre sans perdre son âme. Non, ma fierté n'est pas un crime. Y'a que devant le tout-puissant. On m'a pas la gueule depuis longtemps. Mon frère, leur haine est dure à comprendre. Attends, je n'ai plus le temps d'attendre. Il y aura bien un moment. Je ne l'attends plus, je ne sais plus le bien là-bas. Et peut-être que je me trompe. On sent que les humains. Pas comme moi qui apprennent à vivre. Au nom de la liberté. Voilà, toi, parce que tu es ton destin. Assalamu alaikum, n'endors pas, comme si ce monde était pas fait pour toi. Réveille-toi. Vous m'avez pas l'année.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that was going to stop the music. Was that a good taste?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and sign off for now. We do have our next session starting at 10, so feel free to, grab a drink of water, stretch your legs, and we'll see everyone back here at 10 o'clock.